The day they kicked me out with nothing but a suitcase, I swore I'd never come back. But today, at my half-brother's wedding, his father-in-law is asking to partner with me. And he has no idea I've already decided the fate of his entire family for the next 7 days. Late afternoon sunlight spilled across endless rows of grapevines, turning the vineyard gold. Guests in glittering evening gowns drifted between tables, champagne flutes catching the light. Somewhere near the arbor, a string quartet played a soft waltz, each note floating above the hum of polite conversation. I stepped in quietly and no one noticed. No warm greetings, no curious glances, just another figure slipping through the edges of their perfect day. Ethan spotted me and walked over, his smile polished but his tone pitched just low enough to signal distance. "This is my half-sister, Camille," he said, like it was an afterthought. The small circle of guests around him offered tight, polite smiles. Their eyes slid past me in the same way people glance over the catering staff, there but not worth their attention. One woman, not even looking up from her conversation, extended her empty champagne flute toward me. "Could you top this off?" she asked. I took a slow breath, letting the moment hang. She thought I worked here. I didn't always stand on the outside of my own family. But at 18, my graduation gift wasn't a party or a watch. It was a one-way bus ticket and a half-hearted good luck out there. No hugs, no speeches. No one even came to the station to see me off. Just me, a suitcase, and the quiet understanding that I was no longer part of the picture. Ethan, on the other hand, was the golden child. Straight A's, full scholarships, magazine features about the rising star in finance. His graduation had ice sculptures and a champagne tower. Mine had a cracked vinyl bus seat and the smell of diesel. I remember calling home once, desperate for help with a semester's tuition. My stepmother's voice was flat. "Camille, you made your choice. We're not here to pick up the pieces." That was the last time I asked. From then on, I worked 2 jobs, took night classes, and learned to patch a life together with duct tape, determination, and whatever was left of my pride. I didn't come back for holidays, not for birthdays, not when my father remarried, and definitely not when Ethan's face started appearing in glossy business magazines. I started with a leaky ceiling studio apartment where the desk was an overturned moving box, and the heat cut out every other night. The first prototype I built, an early design for a lithium battery recycling unit, was cobbled together from salvaged parts and sheer stubbornness. It failed on day 3, sending a puff of burnt plastic into my tiny kitchen. I cried, cleaned it up, and started again. My first real contract slipped through my fingers because I couldn't scrape together the deposit for materials. A month later, a storm tore through the city, and the rain came straight through the roof onto my equipment. I sat on the floor in the dark, watching water pool around my work, wondering if I just wasted years of my life. But I kept going. I read industry white papers at 2 in the morning, called suppliers in time zones I'd never visited, and said yes to every opportunity that even smelled like progress. That persistence turned Rowan Innovations from a kitchen table gamble into one of the fastest-growing companies in clean tech. We specialized in large-scale lithium battery recycling and energy storage, quiet, unglamorous work, unless you understood its future value. Industry reporters started calling us a game changer in the future of energy. I just called it survival. 3 days before my brother's wedding, I signed the deal of my career. Rowan Innovations had just acquired a chain of high-grade lithium mines in South America, one of the last major deposits in the entire hemisphere. It wasn't just a good investment. It was the key resource everyone in the energy transition was scrambling to lock down. And here's the part that made it almost poetic. Walter Hensley, my brother's soon-to-be father-in-law, was a Texas oil magnate with a problem. His empire was bleeding relevance as the clean energy wave rose higher each year. Their big survival plan: pivot into large-scale battery storage. One problem: that plan depended entirely on securing a steady, massive supply of lithium. The kind of supply I had just taken off the market. They didn't know yet. Not Ethan. Not Grace. Not the 100 guests swirling wine under the string lights at that wedding. But when Walter's eyes met mine across the courtyard, I saw it, the flicker of recognition, the mental math, the sharp, calculating stillness that comes right before a buyout offer drops. He knew, and I knew he knew. I didn't need to make an announcement. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't the one you play fast. It's the one you let your opponent see coming too late to stop. The reception was in full swing when Walter finally approached me. I'd slipped upstairs to the second-floor balcony, away from the music and the chatter, letting the night air cut through the hum of celebration. From up here, the vineyard stretched into darkness, the last streaks of sunlight fading behind the hills. The French doors opened. Walter stepped out, no champagne flute, no forced smile. Just the measured stride of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. He closed the doors behind him, shutting out the laughter and clinking glasses. "You're the founder of Rowan Innovations," he said. It wasn't a question. I held his gaze steady. "I am, and the South American lithium mines, those are yours now." I set my glass on the railing, the stem making a soft click against the wood. "They belong to my company, which means I decide who we partner with." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm, controlled. "I'll have my people reach out." "They already have," I said, letting the corner of my mouth curve just slightly. "The proposal's sitting on my desk. I haven't decided yet." A pause hung between us, heavy and unbroken. The party noise below seemed a world away. And in that silence, I saw it. The realization that this wasn't just a business negotiation for him anymore. It was survival. I turned back toward the view, effectively ending the conversation. He stayed for another beat, then walked back inside. We both knew what would happen next. 1 week later, the contract was signed. Rowan Innovations became the exclusive lithium supplier for Hensley Energy's clean tech division. The terms were airtight: 60% majority ownership for me, full decision-making authority, and final say on every strategic move. It wasn't a partnership. It was control. Walter got the lithium his empire needed to survive. I got the keys to the future of his clean energy arm. And Ethan, his name didn't appear anywhere, not on the press release, not in the internal memos, not even in the special thanks line Walter insisted on adding. When the announcement hit the business news, my phone lit up with congratulatory calls from industry leaders. From my family, silence. Later that week, I heard from a mutual friend that Ethan had seen the headline over breakfast. He didn't say a word, just set the paper down, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was a reminder, quiet, undeniable, of exactly where the real power sat now. A few days after the deal went public, an email from Grace landed in my inbox. "We'd love to have you at our post-wedding brunch this Sunday, just family this time." I stared at the screen for a moment, then clicked it closed. I didn't respond right away. There was nothing in that message that wasn't perfectly polite and perfectly hollow. 3 days later, I replied with a single line. "I'll have to decline. Busy week." What I didn't say was that my busy week had nothing to do with contracts or boardrooms. I was preparing for something far more important than sipping mimosas over polite conversation. The following Saturday, the air inside the converted warehouse buzzed with something you couldn't bottle: excitement, possibility. Rows of new workbenches gleamed under bright industrial lights. On one side, solar panel prototypes stood ready for testing. On the other, battery storage units waited for eager hands. The sign above the entrance read, Rowan Future Lab. Dozens of young women from rural Texas towns had shown up, some in borrowed blazers, others in dusty jeans straight from the ranch. They didn't care about appearances. They were here to learn. Halfway through the tour, a 17-year-old with oil stains on her sleeves stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "Thank you, I want to be an energy engineer, like you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Instead, I smiled, and in that smile lived every bus ride out of town, every night I worked 2 jobs, every room I'd walked into where no one expected me to matter. I hadn't come here to prove my family wrong. I came to prove myself right. They could keep their wedding brunches, their polite smiles, and their carefully guarded tables. I had something bigger, something they couldn't give me and could never take away. The legacy I was building didn't require their permission. It was already alive in every young woman standing in that lab, soldering circuits and sketching designs for a future they'd one day lead. I glanced around the room, the hum of conversation mixing with the faint crackle of a welding torch. This wasn't the end of my story, not even close. They can hold on to their past, I thought. I'll keep building the future. And I knew this was only my opening move.